Hi, Zainab. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Natasha Yim is an author of fiction and non-fiction works for children and young adults. Born in Malaysia, she grew up in Singapore and Hong Kong, where she was captivated by the old Chinese legends she heard as a child. She is the author of Like Mother, Like Daughter, inspired by Disney and Pixar's film Turning Red. Mulan's Lunar New Year, published by Disney Press. Otto's Rainy Day, a kid's pick of the list selection. Cixi, the Dragon Empress, and Goldy Luck and Three Pandas, a 2014 Junior Library Guild selection and 2015 Scholastic Book Club selection. Hi, welcome to Studimation. Thank you
Thank you
so
very much for having me.
thank you so much for joining in today. Are you ready to answer the questions?
I am.
What inspired you to become an author?
Well, when I was in seventh grade in school, I had an English teacher who gave us this creative writing assignment. And the creative writing assignment was to create a deserted island. And then we had to kind of make up our own towns and mountains and rivers. And we could kind of come up with our own creative names. And then we had to kind of people it with characters and make up a story about them living on this island. And I had so much fun with this project using my imagination, my creativity, that I really got hooked on writing. And then so ever since that time, I've wanted to be a writer. And I was 11 years old at the time.
Wow, that's interesting. Would you like to share any of your childhood memory?
Um, I think my most significant childhood memories when it comes to reading and writing is that my parents always had a lot of books at home. There was always bookshelves full of books, and my mom would read to us every night at bedtime, every night. And then, I used to like being sick because when I was sick, I got to stay home, and then my mom would bring me some soup, and then she'd read a story when I was in bed. And so it's always brought home some very nostalgic feelings for me. And so when I had my own kids, I tried to kind of do the same thing where bedtime every night, when they go to bed, there was always a story time, and I tried to carry on that tradition.
Wow, that's an awesome story. If you could be a character in one of your own books, who would you be and why?
Um, I think I would like to be Sacagawea because Sacagawea had this, even though it's a very tough time for women in her day because you women couldn't really go out and do anything. They had to sort of obey their husbands. They were, there to be mothers. And so I think because of that, her journey with Lewis and Clark to travel the American West was such an amazing journey. I think they all in all, there and back from the Pacific Ocean and back was about, 4,500 miles, something like that. And she traveled the farthest out of any woman at in her time period. And so I think it was just an amazing story. I know she didn't go on the trip of her own free will. She was married uh, Toussaint Charbonneau, who was the interpreter. He was hired on as the interpreter for Lewis and Clark. So she was kind of on that journey, kind of by accident, although they did use her interpretive skills when they ran into some Native American tribes. She was able to help them communicate. Um, but just the fact that she traveled with a 2-month-old baby on her back and she saw all these amazing things. And remember, back in those days, women didn't really leave their villages. So for her to go that far and travel and kind of discover the American West that nobody had seen before, you know, the Native Americans were there, but no white man had really discovered the area. And even Sacagawea was very unfamiliar with a lot of the territories they went to. So I think it was just an amazing adventure, and that she went and did that while being a mother and having a young child with her was just an amazing journey
That's
and very
impressive.
brave, I think.
Yes. That's very cool. If you were to collaborate with another author, who would it be?
Oh boy, there's so many authors out there I would love to collaborate with. I have started reading, I don't know if you know who Gordon Corman is.
No.
He writes a lot of fantastic middle grade stories, and they're very inventive and very creative, and he's got a really good voice. And I think his stories are a lot of fun. So I've been kind of reading and listening to a lot of his audiobooks. So I think he's one I would love to collaborate with just because I think he's got this very inventive mind. And the other person I would love to collaborate with is J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books. I think she does such a fantastic job with plotting and character development. I think I can learn a lot from her.
I hope you get to collaborate with them soon. Why
Me
did you
too.
why did you choose to write books on Disney movies?
That sort of came about by accident. Disney was the one that approached me. They were looking for somebody to write a book about Mulan celebrating Chinese New Year, and they were looking around for authors who had done Chinese New Year books, and they came upon my book Goldy Luck and the Three Pandas, and that book has a Chinese New Year theme. So then they called me and said, "Would you be willing to write?" Um, a book about Mulan celebrating Chinese New Year. And so that's how I got my foot in the door with Disney. I wrote that book for them. They liked it. It was a beautiful book that came out. And then last year, another editor from Disney called me and said, you know, we have this other project, and it's based on a Disney Pixar movie. Would you be interested in writing? So all three books. I have another one for Disney coming out in May. And I think all three books, they contacted me and they assigned to me the projects. So I think I feel very lucky because I really enjoy working with Disney and Pixar because I get to see the movies. I get a pre-screening, an early screening of the movies, and I get to read an early script, so it's really fun that way.
Amazing. Have you ever incorporated your culture in any of your books?
Yeah, actually, all of my books um, except the last Disney book, which is really about Lightyear, is the new Buzz Lightyear movie that's coming out. So that one was kind of a summary of the movie. And my very first book, Otto's Rainy Day, which I just kind of wrote, and the illustrator was the one that decided to illustrate him as a little boy with blonde hair. After that, I had the opportunity to write for a small publishing company that was doing a series of nonfiction books about women in history. And that was when I came upon Cixi, the Dragon Empress, and decided to do my research and write the story about her. And I got a list from the publisher of a, a group of historical women that I could choose from. And I picked her because I decided really wanted to touch base with my cultural roots. And I thought I don't know very much about Chinese history at all. And this was a good way to learn about the history of my culture. And so I decided to write about Cixi the Dragon Empress. And after that, I just really liked the idea of writing from introducing elements of the Chinese culture to kids around the world. And so, you know, I started featuring that more in my work. And with Goldy Luck and the Three Pandas, you know, I instead of I took Goldy Luck and I made her a Chinese girl, and that opened some, you know, opened some ideas about introducing Chinese New Year and Chinese festivals and all that. And then same thing with Mulan, you know, it touched base on the Chinese culture and the Chinese festival. And then, you know, the Rock Maiden, I really loved that legend growing up in Hong Kong as a child, and I've always wanted to write that story. So it was a good opportunity for me to sort of bring that Chinese legend to life.
Fascinating. I believe the beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its people.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yes. What genres do you mostly write on?
Right now, mostly picture books. I am working on a middle grade two middle grade stories. One is a contemporary novel with supernatural elements. It's about a Chinese girl who meets a guardian angel who's not Chinese, and so there's cultural conflicts and it's kind of a humorous book. And then the other story I'm working on is a historical fiction. So it's set in 1809 in off the Chinese coast, and it's about off the southern coast of China, and it's about Chinese pirates. So that's a historical fiction. So yeah, I'm working on two books, and they do both have cultural elements in it.
That's really nice. How technology has changed our reading habits.
Well, I think for one thing, it's made I think kids' attention spans a lot shorter. So because with video games or TV, I mean, you can kind of change things at the click of a remote button, right? Or you can, on a iPad, you can just swipe things to go on to the next thing. So I think because of that, the writing and the plotting has to be a lot sharper, and you have to kind of get to the action a lot quicker. So I think writers nowadays have to keep that in mind, where you have to hook your reader within the first page or two, whereas in books, you know, from decades past, you could take 10 pages to really get into the action, but now it has to happen a lot quicker.
Yes, we should keep reading. Tell
Yes,
us,
definitely.
yes, tell us the most difficult step of your writing process.
Um, I when I first started out, I used to think that editing was the most difficult part. But now I actually quite like the editing process because you already have the story there and you're just going back to kind of refine things and make things better, play around with language and make that more musical. I think for me, the hardest part is probably sitting down with a blank page, and getting your ideas down on paper. Sometimes it's easier with picture books because they tend to be shorter, but the revising for picture books just takes just as long as a novel. I think right now I'm struggling with I'm writing my middle grade novel, so the novel length rather than picture book length, and I kind of get bogged down in the middle with the plotting. So I think that's my struggle right now is just getting through a novel length manuscript.
That's a brilliant writing process. I like the way you handled it all. What advice would you like to give to the younger generation?
I think it's just to keep writing, keep creating. All of us have stories in us to tell. We're all storytellers in some way. When you come home from go back to school from summer vacation and your friends ask you, what did you do this summer? you know, you tell the story of what you did this summer. So all of us have these stories in us to tell. And if you're interested in writing for publication, it's a difficult process because a lot of people do want to write for publication. So you're competing with a lot of different people, but it's to just keep writing and keep creating. The world needs art and they need literature and they need these beautiful stories out in the world. So just to keep writing.
Thank you so much for such a great advice. Where can we find your books?
You can find my books on Amazon. I always like to try and encourage people to find it in their independent bookstores because I'm a very strong proponent of independent bookstores. I like to, there tend to be smaller businesses, so I'd like to help them survive. So if you have a bookstore near you, go there. They can order the books, even if they don't keep it in stock. They can order the book through their distributors. So so support your independent bookstores if you can. Barnes and Nobles, you can get it from there too. Um, and yeah, and those are just some of the places. The other place I like to also suggest is bookshop.org. It's an online bookstore, but every amount that they make off a sale of a book, they contribute to or donate a portion of it to independent bookstores. So they're a good cause.
Awesome. With this, we end our chat. Thank you so much for joining in. It was fun talking to you. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.